we always had to go to my dad's families, and it was every year I was just full of stress and anxiety because I had to go to my dad's family's house. It was super chaotic. There was always something going on that wasn't good. It just brought me a lot of anxiety. I never wanted to go to my dad's families. And every single Christmas Eve, we would go to my dad's side of the families. Is there any family that you have to go to that's just like, you just kind of cringe when you have to go there? Yeah, okay. So we got some honest people. That's good to know. So if you raise your hand, couple on stage, this is live right now. I'm just teasing. It's a joke. But I felt, kind of like, I don't know. Give you an example. I would go to my grandma's house, and my cousins would always get like brand new Nike hoodies, and I would get like a Walmart sweatshirt. And they were the same age as me, by the way. It's just like, come on. And so that was kind of disappointing, right? It was kind of disheartening. People would have to take a smoke break like every 15 minutes. You never knew, like, it was one. You ever like go to like families or just someone's house where you're thankful that your parents are there because it's like the only food you're going to eat there at that event? It was one of those things, I would only eat what my mom's macaroni or, something that was good because they always had just like terrible food options. It was just never good. And I was super picky when I was younger. So anyway, so that happened. Every single year, there was always someone that got in a fight or an argument or got super upset. And it was just like, oh my goodness, here we go again. And so every single Christmas Eve, that is where we would go to my dad's families. It's now been about 15 years since I have spent Christmas with my dad's side of the family. Two of my dad's sisters have now passed away. One of my dad's sister's sons, both of them have passed away. My dad's brother is in a wheelchair because a deer ran out in the middle of the road. He swerved to miss it on his way to work, and it completely paralyzed him for the rest of his life. And my brother, my dad's brother, completely hates my grandma. It's just one of those things where it's just a mess. It feels hopeless. And just every time I go there, I'm just anxious. I'm like trying to be on edge. I'm trying to be the nice person, but deep down inside, I know I'm really stressed out. But I think it's safe to say tonight that this time of the year, especially if you're a parent, can bring a lot of stress. And if you have different things going on in your life, this time of the year, let's be honest, can be really stressful, even for you guys. For instance, like your normal schedule, it gets disrupted. Your normal schedule changes. We can feel the pressure to socialize to extended family members, and you feel that pressure. Maybe your parents are divorced, so that brings stress knowing that you have to be divided between families at Christmas time. Maybe you have financial stress because it's like, oh man, how am I going to get my girl something for Christmas? Or how am I going to get my boyfriend something for Christmas? I don't have any money. And so you're stressing about that. Maybe you feel the pressure from unrealistic expectations to have a perfect Christmas and everything has to be perfect. Maybe social media or knowing that friends are going to be going and hanging out with each other, and in the past, that time of the year, you don't really ever get invited to those things, and so that kind of puts you down in the dumps. Let's be real. A lot of times, this should be the most wonderful time of the year, the most joyous time of the year, but if we're really honest, it can be the most stressful time of the year. It can bring a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, and not just that, but I think outside of that, I think that we all struggle with stress in some way. We all struggle with anxieties in some way, shape, or form. Maybe you struggle with academic pressure. Maybe you struggle with social anxieties around other people. Maybe you have body image concerns. Maybe you struggle with peer pressure. Maybe you struggle with the constant comparison trap on social media. Maybe you have identity struggles. Maybe you struggle with the future that just is uncertain right now. You don't know what you're going to do. Where am I going to go to college? Am I actually going to get to go to college? No one's responded yet. I haven't got the scholarship yet. It's getting stressful. I don't know what to do. I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. Oh my gosh, I got to decide. And you're stressed out about that. Lack of sleep. The overall stress of navigating the transition from being a child to an adult. Like, these are all stresses that I feel like you all struggle with, and that we all deal with these things, and we've all been through these things. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to, everybody, just close your eyes real quick. Close your eyes. Don't close them too long and go to sleep on me, okay? But close your eyes, and I want you to, don't say it out loud, but I want you to, as you close your eyes, I want you to think about, what is my greatest source of stress in this season of my life? What is the greatest source of my stress in this season of my life? I think that we all have something that maybe pops in our minds when we think about that. Maybe it's one overarching things. Maybe you got so many things that stress you out. It's multiple things. But we all struggle in some ways with stress. You guys can open your mind. And so, if you got that thing in your mind, I want you to keep that in mind as we go throughout this sermon tonight. I think in order to relieve those stresses in our lives, I feel like some things that God showed me was that we go towards a certain path, or we go down certain paths whenever stress comes into our lives. We all have stress, and when stress comes in our mind, there are certain things that are our go-tos when that stress comes into our mind. And so I want to share with you a few things tonight, different paths that we take when stress pops into our mind. First thing I want to talk about tonight is pleasure. Pleasure is sometimes when we're stressed out, pleasure is the route that we go to ease our stress. What do I mean by pleasure? Social media, TV shows, movies, video games. Maybe you try to get others to laugh, and that brings you pleasure. Maybe it's listening to music. Maybe it's working out. Maybe it's sexual sin, and maybe it's going to pornography. Maybe it's just sleeping or taking a nap. And that's where you go when things are stressful. It's like, I'm just going and I am zoning out and I am sleeping. And the bad thing about when we're stressed out of choosing the path of pleasure, there's a big problem with that, because it's typically very, very short-lived when we go down the path of pleasure. Sensory experiences that can be fleeting and dependent on external factors. A lot of us have this dopamine addiction. It's just so true for most of us. Like, if I have a bad day, like I'm literally, like, at the end of the day, I don't want to like do anything, and sometimes I don't want to read my Bible, and I would rather just like lay there in my bed and just flip through reels that just make me laugh. It's just like I want to just numb out, and I just want to laugh for a little bit. Does anybody else do that? Okay, so we got a few people so that relate to me, so that's cool. But a lot of us have a dopamine addiction. A dopamine addiction occurs when a person becomes dependent on activities or substances that overstimulate the brain's dopamine pathways, causing obsessive behavior despite negative consequences, constantly pursuing pleasure and reward. This addiction interferes with regular functioning and decision-making. So if I'm when I'm really stressed out, if I'm going and when I get stressed out, if this is the path that I always take, if I always take this path of pleasure, if I'm always going that direction, it might be good for a while, right? Because pleasure, let's be real, it feels good. It makes us feel better about ourselves. It feels good for a while, doesn't it? It might bring you peace for just a little while. But the thing about when we're stressed out, when we have anxiety of choosing the path of pleasure, it's a temporary thing, it's fleeting, and eventually it's going to fade out. It's a temporary peace. It's temporary. And here's the thing about pleasure, is the more that I seek pleasure, the less enjoyable that pleasure becomes. Think about it. Like if you had a video game and it's just awesome, it's amazing, like I'm never going to play another video game ever. How many of you would be real and say this thing's getting boring now and it's getting old, right? Why? Because you want something new. You want something fresh. It no longer is fun and amazing. Maybe your friends have moved on because they've gotten the PS6, you know? It's actually coming out in January. If you guys didn't know, I made that up. So here's the thing. Some of you guys are like, what? No, that's a joke. So here's the thing. We're always looking for that new thing. We're always looking at that. But what it does is it leads, the thing that I've realized about pleasure in my life, if I always, like when I stress out, if I'm always going to pleasure, eventually that thing that was pleasing to me is no longer enough. It's no longer good enough anymore. And so what I need is something that is going to, that's a little bit more intense, that is going to meet the same standard of satisfaction. Does that make sense? And that's what we do. I mean, like with porn, it might start off, where it's, someone kissing on TV, but eventually it's like, oh, well, what is that about? And then you get on this thing, and then you just keep going down this road, and then you're all the way down this path, and eventually it's so dark, you don't know how to get out of it, you don't know how to get back, because why? Because it's like it was never enough, and you always wanted more, and you were more and more curious of how far can I go? Or maybe it started out with, oh, wow, I'm just going to take a little sip of wine or something like that. And it starts out kind of innocent because maybe it was a funny joke that maybe your dad, and then you just kind of keep going deeper and deeper, and eventually gets this addiction. Or maybe it's smoking, and it's like, oh, this is no longer enough. I need something a little bit stronger. And eventually we get down this path of pleasure, and we don't know how to get back. If I'm walking path of pleasure, it's going to be good for a while. But we're eventually going to look for more intense experiences to achieve the same results. You walk down that road long enough, eventually it's going to lead to addictions. It's going to lead to dissatisfaction and even depression. If we're constantly going to pleasures to bring us peace, it's just leading us down a bad road, a road full of darkness. When we constantly chase pleasure, it's just going to keep diminishing our experiences. Anytime you're stressed out, this cannot be every single time our go-to when we're stressed out or when we're struggling. And some of us, maybe for you, maybe when you're stressed out, it's not the path of pleasure. But maybe for you, maybe it's the path of people. Maybe whenever you are stressed, you rely on other people, right? And that's not always a bad thing, to go to people when you're stressed or when you're struggling, because it's a good thing to seek out wise counsel and to seek things where it's like, I don't know what's going on right now. Can you help me? I'm really struggling with anxiety and stress. I'm really struggling with those things. And it's good to seek godly advice. And I know for me, like if I'm stressed out or if I'm having a lot of anxiety, like I can instantly call one or two of my close friends, and I know that they can help me through that time. That's a good thing to have, right? It's a great thing to have. Some of you ladies, when things aren't going well in your life or things have been going really bad, I'm sure there's nothing better than saying, Chantel, I got to talk to you. I'm going through this right now. And she just has the eyes and the sincerity to just really listen. She's a great listener. She's great at giving good advice. And so when you are going through something, there is just nothing better than getting to have a conversation with Chantel, right? Like that's might be your go-to, right? And I know for some of you guys, it's like, man, when I'm really stressed out and I'm full of anxiety, the one thing that I need is just the vast wisdom that Jamie has to offer me. And I know that you feel that way. And maybe it's not me, maybe it's Billy or Luke or Kendall, and maybe that's your kind of your go-to people when you're stressed out. But we all have people maybe that we go to when things aren't going well. Maybe you go to a certain friend. Maybe you go to the person that you're dating because I have finally found someone that actually gets me and understands me. Like they truly love me. No one else understands me but them. And so like that's your go-to person when you're stressed out and when you have anxiety. Maybe you go to a certain person because they're the person that always tells you what you want to hear. And maybe they're the person that always says certain things or does certain things, even if it's not truthful, just to try to cheer you up. And you're always going to that person. And as long as you always have that person, you can always play the victim. And so therefore, you're always going to that certain person. But the problem with relying on people is sometimes we can become very codependent on people. And we can rely on people a little bit too much. I'll be honest, the older I get, a lot of people in my life have let me down. And a lot of my really good, close friends have hurt me deeply. And I've tried to be a good friend, and they've completely rejected me. And the older I get, the more and more I realize it's just sometimes really hard to find good people to rely on. And I'm not trying to discourage you from relying on people because we need good people around us. You need good friends. You need people around you to give you good advice. But a lot of people have let me down. A lot of friends have left my life. My mom and dad have hurt me. Certain people have hurt me. My sisters hurt me, let me down. And even this, my own wife has hurt me and let me down. Don't tell her I said that. No, I'm just teasing. Kinley will tell her when I get home. But I used to rely on my parents when I lived at home, right? And now when you move out of your home and you get your own place and you have your own family, like you can't really rely on your family to be there. You can't rely on your dad to come and help you out with this or that. You got to kind of like figure things out yourself. But the danger with codependency is people are going to leave in your life. People are going to let you down. People are going to hurt your feelings. People are going to say hurtful things. And sometimes just seasons change, and people's like, man, God's calling me in a different direction. And then that person's no longer in your life. And if you become so codependent on that person, and then they move out of your life, like you're going to be crushed, and you're not going to be able to move forward because you have spent all your time and energy relying on maybe that certain person. I mean, for some of you probably realize this. Think about the friends that you had in elementary school. Would you say they're still probably your closest friends? Some of you guys. How many of you guys have had good, close friends like, man, we're going to be friends and friends forever? That's an old song you guys wouldn't know. But we're going to be friends forever, right? And they're no longer in your life. How many of you guys would say, man, my friendships have changed over the years? there might be one or two people that have been close, but for the most part, people that you used to be really close with are now no longer in your life even, right? Because maybe you've moved or you've changed schools, or maybe that person did you wrong. It's like, man, I've just kind of cut that person off from my life. Or maybe they've developed really bad habits. And it's like, I don't want to be around this person anymore because they just do some really ucky things, and I don't want to be around that. Things change. Some of you ladies would say, man, I relied on Jess Purdy quite a bit, and she was always my go-to. But now Jess has a baby, and now she's not here as much. Or she can't be here right now because she's taking care of a baby, right? Or maybe you're like, man, I really relied on Miley a lot, and now she's not here. Or maybe I really relied on Amber a lot, and now she's not here. And those can be really challenging things when you rely on someone. They're your go-to person, right? Maybe you've relied on Madison, Chantel, Christina, Luke. But what if God calls that person a different direction and they're no longer in your life? Or what if that really close best friend's like, man, we're going to be together forever? What if God calls them to a completely different country to be a missionary and they're never in your life ever again? Are you ready for that experience? Or maybe God calls them to Africa and he's like, I'm really supposed to stay here and raise my family here, and I might not ever see them again. That's a hard thing to think about, isn't it? Some of you have got to stop relying on external validation from others because you are neglecting your own inner strength, and you are neglecting your own coping mechanisms even. Because it's like, this is what I do to cope and get through things. If you're relying on the person that you are dating, it's like, wow, I rely on this person because when I'm struggling, I go to this person. And I go to my boyfriend or my girlfriend, and they make me feel better about myself. And you're always going to that person. Or maybe it's like wow, we have sex, and it makes me feel better about myself, so I'm always going to this person. And you're always going to them. Or maybe some of you might be in relationships right now, and you realize, I can't even hang out with my old friends anymore because they'll get jealous and mad. That is not a good, healthy relationship to be in the first place. Do you know, this is kind of a crazy stat. I actually found this today, and I was like, this is crazy to me. And I'm not saying that this is not possible, but it says only about 2% of people marry their high school sweethearts. That's kind of crazy, right? If you are relying on that person to help fix your stress, what happens when they break up with you? What happens when they cheat on you? What happens when they say, I don't want anything to do with you anymore? That is going to crush you. Because why? Because you've spent all your time and energy relying on that certain person, and now it's like, wow, I've been like walking along this path with this person, and then you walk along with them so far, and they leave your life, and then you're stuck in the darkness, like, I don't know what to do now because I've relied on this person so long. Some of you are in relationships right now that you have no business being in. I'll just be honest with you. And maybe the reason that you're with that person is because maybe you have fear of abandonment. Maybe you were abandoned when you were younger. Maybe a certain parent has abandoned your life. And now it's like, I'm holding on to this relationship. And because of that fear of abandonment, you will stay in a bad relationship way longer than you need to be in that relationship. And I'm telling you, it is not good for your life, and you need to just cut that thing off. The person is keeping you trapped. The Bible says in Psalms 146:3, it says, do not put your trust in people, in human beings who cannot save. Oh, I thought that was this thing was kind of like going around. I thought it was a bug, so never mind. And for some of you, maybe it's not pleasure, maybe it's not people. Maybe for you, when you're stressed out, you go directly to your passions, right? Your passions. I used to be so passionate about sports, guys. Like I was so passionate about basketball and football. Like I would never miss a game. I would stay outside till late in the morning. I had lights outside. I would stay outside. I would shoot basketball till like 2, 3 in the morning. I just loved it. I would, that was my passion, was really basketball. I was so passionate about it. I never, growing up, I never missed a Bulls game, which is, when Michael Jordan played. I just never missed a game. I was so passionate about it. So passionate about football and just watching it and being so engaged in the game and getting so upset when my team lost. I used to be so passionate about fishing and hunting. I didn't even go fishing once this year. That's crazy to me. I used to be so passionate about these things. Maybe your passion is art. Maybe your passion is computers. Maybe your passion is being like a content creator. It's like, man, I'm really passionate about this. Maybe could be video games you're really passionate. Maybe it's cooking. Maybe it's photography. Maybe it's reading. I don't know. Whatever your passion is, we all have passions. And when we're really stressed out, it's easy to go straight to our passions when we are struggling, when we have anxieties, and we are going through that. Some of you have maybe heard this phrase. Have you ever heard, like, if you do what you love, you'll never have to work again? Has anybody ever heard that quote? Okay. If you do what you love, you'll never work another day in your life. They actually did research on that particular thing, if that's a true statement. And what they found was that, this is research that I found out, typically these are the people that get exploited in a job. These are the people that get asked to work longer hours or to take on demeaning tasks that are unrelated to their jobs. This is largely because employers tend to think that passionate people view extra work as a reward. Kind of interesting. There was a story, and I read this story, I thought it was interesting. There was a Japanese girl. She started her career as a doujinman, is that right? Anyways, she was an animator, right? She was like an anime animator for things in Japan. An entry-level role, responsibility for transforming illustrations into frame-by-frame blocks that are later strung together in order to create the illusion of motion. Landing this job was a dream. She had nurtured a lifelong passion for drawing, and seeing her artwork appear in popular anime shows and films was initially invaluable. Over time, however, the demands of the job became too much. Her paycheck depended on the number of illustrations that she drew in a month. For each drawing, she was compensated roughly $1. And if she didn't complete a minimum of 300 drawings each month, she was not paid at all. The pressure was traumatizing. Although she had been illustrating her whole life, she found it hard to keep up, as did her coworkers. She and her peers drew, her and her peers drew endlessly throughout the day, rarely taking the briefest of breaks, and worked so late into the night that seeing family or friends was often unthinkable. When 6 months in, she decided to quit. Her decision took a major toll. This was a job she was supposed to love, a position she aspired to hold for many years. It was her dream job. She was producing the kind of work she had always hoped to. But now that doing what she loved was no longer desirable for her, she found it difficult to reconcile her identity as an illustrator. And out of fear of similar experiences, sought to work in a different industry entirely. Within the animation industry, people commonly report eerily similar situations, being underpaid and working overtime, all while sacrificing their basic needs and relationships. When we quit the things we are passionate about, we may feel like failures because of the emphasis our society places on persevering through the grind. But as her story illustrates, if a job turns so toxic that it's impacting your physical and mental health, and one option to seriously consider is moving on. So if your passions are causing you to burn out, they're causing mental stress, maybe you need to take a break from that thing. Or to say, this is not the thing for me because it's causing too much. When I worked at a graphic designer, I worked in a very demanding job. And it was very fast-paced, and we had to meet certain deadlines as a graphic designer. And I remember one time, multiple times actually, the job that I worked for said, if you do not get this job done in this time, we will fire you. And so when you're living with that, when you've got a young family and you're like just trying to get enough to get by, it's super stressful. It's super overwhelming. And my chest hurt all the time. I was always full of anxiety and fear of like, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose my job. And if I don't get this done, and I would stay up late, I would miss out on my family. There was one time where I worked a shift, or I worked 42 hours straight at work, and I didn't even come home. I worked 42 hours straight. Didn't get up from my computer other than to go to the bathroom. I came back. I didn't even eat during that time. Why? Because I had to meet that deadline. It was so stressful. It was so overwhelming. And I did. I got a whole entire catalog design, and I got it finished, and I met my deadline, and I did it in like less than a week's time. But did me getting that done help anything? No. I still had that stress and anxiety because every single day, okay, well, we got this new project coming up, and we really got a strict deadline. We got to meet this. We need your design work done. We got to have it quickly. You got to make sure you work. And I was like, oh my gosh. And so that your chest hurt. When your chest hurts, when you're full of anxiety, when your brain just constantly going of like, I'm not good enough, I'm a failure if I don't do this, that's a tough place to live in. And I was so passionate about design and art, and I loved everything about it. But by pursuing that passion and allowing that passion to overtake me to where it affected my family, my mental health, it affected all these things, that's not something that we need to just keep going down. It is not worth it to pursue your passion so much that it is affecting you mentally and physically. It's just not worth it. So if you're in a state to where your passions, maybe you're passionate about soccer, maybe you're passionate about dance, maybe you're passionate about playing in the band, maybe you're passionate about video games, but if that thing is causing so much stress in your life, if that thing is now taking place of Jesus in your life, maybe it's time to step back from that passion and say, wait a minute, I have put this passion over Jesus, and when I get stressed out, I'm going out and I'm shooting basketball. When I get stressed out, I'm going out into the garage and I'm hitting a punching bag. When I get stressed out, I'm going to work out. You're going to your passions every single time, and we go down that road when we're stressed out. Some of us, when we're stressed out, go directly to our passions. And listen, I'm not saying your passions is a bad thing, because I truly believe that God puts certain passions in our heart and puts things in us and designs us so uniquely so that maybe we'll be the person that does something about that area and brings Jesus to that area. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is do not allow when you are stressed out, to be your passions the main thing that you go to. And the last thing is this. And by our prayer service that we had a few weeks ago, I think a lot of us, when we're really stressed out, we want to take the path of perfection. What do I mean by that? There are those of us that when we're stressed out, we feel like the only way that we can have peace is by becoming more perfect. And I don't struggle with that, because I realize I'm not perfect in any way, shape, or form. But there are some of you that when I say that, it just really penetrates deep. It's like, man, I always feel like I got to be better and I've got to be more perfect. The only way that you can have peace is by being more perfect. I have to get an A+. I got to be perfect. I can't get an A-. If I get an A-, then that's not going to be good, and I won't be the best in my class. I have to train harder. I have to be this certain weight. I have to drop this much weight. I have to look better because then maybe I'll be able to fit in with a certain group of friends. And some of you truly look to being more perfect to bring you peace in your life. And that's an exhausting way to live. Some of you, the biggest cause of your mental health, it's perfection. The thing that brings you the most anxiety is your own perfection. You're constantly full of anxiety. And the only way that you feel like you can cure that is by ensuring that, okay, how do I become more perfect? Okay, I filled up. I just can't mess up again. I just can't do that anymore. Oh, I got to make sure that my room's perfect. I got to make sure that everything's in order and clean because I don't want to get in trouble. I want to make sure that I don't get in trouble. I want to make sure that everything's perfect. I got to make sure that I don't mess up. I don't get a bad grade. I got to make sure that I don't have a bad game. I can't have any bad games. I can't ever mess up. I have to make that shot. I have to do that. I have to kick that goal. I have to make sure that when I play the instrument, it's perfect. I have to make sure that when I'm working in school, everything's perfect. And when we're always striving for perfection, all that does, when we are looking to perfection to help our stress level, if I be more perfect, it'll bring more peace. And the only thing you're doing in your life is you're creating more anxiety in your life. Some of you have even isolated yourself to seek perfection. Some of you have low esteem because your self-worth is based on achieving perfection. And maybe that's a pressure your parents put on you to achieve perfection. Maybe that's something that's just in you and you put it on yourself to just be perfect. It's like you get this type A personality, like I've got to be perfect. I can't mess up. I can't fail. I can't let anybody down. I got to be a good example for my younger brothers and sisters. I can't do anything bad. I can't ever mess up. I can't even walk sideways. It's just like you just got to walk perfectly all the time. It's impossible to experience peace when you're always expecting perfection. If I can just be more perfect, then I'll experience the peace. If I can just stop messing up, if I can be better at my schoolwork, then I'll experience the peace. If I can do this or do that. I want to give you some relief tonight. You're not perfect, and you can't be. And Romans 3:23 says, "For all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God." It don't matter how good you think you are, you'll never measure up, and you'll never, ever be good enough. So when you get stressed, we can't go down these paths. So what do? What do we do when we can't rely on our pleasures when we're stressed out, or people, or passions, or perfection? And sometimes it's okay to go to those things when we're stressed out because, wanting to do better in a certain area, there's nothing wrong with that. That's a good thing that God put inside of you. Like, I want to do better. I want to honor my family. I want to do good in school. Those are great things to have. But if it's causing anxiety and overwhelming you, then maybe you need to take a step back. There's nothing wrong with the things that you're passionate about. Those are good things. There's nothing wrong with when you're stressed out to go to people because we need to surround ourselves with people. There's nothing wrong with every once in a while just having a little bit of pleasure and have a little bit of fun. There's nothing wrong with those things. So tonight, I want to share with you about a guy, and this is kind of our message tonight. I want to share with you a guy by the name of Zechariah, which starts in Luke chapter 1. And it's actually, Luke chapter 1, for those of you who don't know, it's actually the longest book or the longest chapter in the whole New Testament. And I'm going to read all 80-some verses. No, I'm not going to do that. But I am reading a lot of the verses because I want you to hear this story. So, Yeah, so I'm going to start with verse 5 of chapter 1. In the time of Herod, king of Judea, there was a priest named Zechariah who belonged to the priestly division of Abiah. His wife Elizabeth was also a descendant of Aaron. Both of them were righteous in the sight of God, observing all the Lord's commands and decrees blamelessly. But they were childless because Elizabeth was not able to conceive, and they were both very old. Once when Zechariah's division was on duty, and he was serving as priest before God, he was chosen by lot, according to the customs of the priesthood, to go into the temple of the Lord and burn incense. And when the time from burning the incense came, all the assembled worshipers were praising outside. Then an angel of the Lord appeared to him, standing beside the right side of the altar of the incense. When Zechariah saw him, he was startled and was gripped with fear. But the angel said to him, "Do not be afraid, Zechariah. Your prayer has been heard. Your wife Elizabeth will bear you a son, and you are to call him John. He will be a joy and a delight to you, and many will rejoice because of his birth. For he will be great in the sight of the Lord. He is never to take wine or strong drink or alcoholic drinks, and he will be filled with the Holy Spirit even before he is born." Now, that'd be sweet, wouldn't it? He will bring back many of the people of Israel to the Lord their God, and he will go on before the Lord in the spirit of the power of Elijah, to turn the hearts of the parents to their children and the disobedient to the wisdom of the righteous, to make ready a people prepared for the Lord. Zechariah asked the angel, how can I be sure of this? I'm an old man, and my wife is well along in years. The angel said to him, I am Gabriel. I stand in the presence of God, and I have been sent to speak to you and to tell you this good news. Now, hold up a second. If I see an angel standing there, and he's like telling me this, it's like, well, how am I supposed to be sure? I mean, come on. Anyways. And here's what the angel says. I'm Gabriel. I stand in the presence of God. I have been sent to speak to you and tell you this good news. And now you will be silent and not able to speak until the day that this happens, because you do not believe my words, which will come true at their appointed time. Meanwhile, the people were waiting for Zechariah and wondering why he stayed in there so long in the temple. When he came out, he could not speak to them. They realized he had seen a vision in the temple, for he kept making signs to them, but remained unable to speak. When his time of service was completed, he returned home. After this, his wife Elizabeth became pregnant, and for 5 months remained in seclusion. The Lord has done this for me, she said. In these days, he has shown his favor and taken away my disgrace among the people. So you imagine this happens to Zechariah. Gabriel tells Zechariah, you're going to have a son. He's actually going to prepare the way for Jesus to come. And this is what he's going to do. He's going to bring and turn the children's hearts of their people. He's basically going to prepare the way for Jesus to come. That's what he's supposed to do. And because Zechariah didn't believe him, the angel made him completely mute. He couldn't talk at all. So imagine knowing that, and you can't talk for like this long period of time until the baby's born. That'd be really challenging, right? And then we jump down to verse 57. When it was time for Elizabeth to have her baby, she gave birth to a son. Her neighbors and relatives heard that the Lord had shown her great mercy, and they shared her joy. On the 8th day, they came to circumcise the child, and they were going to name him after his father Zechariah. Keep in mind, he still can't talk. Zechariah can't talk. Knowing about the baby, he can't say a word. They said to her, there is no one among your relatives who But his mother spoke up and said, no, he is to be called John. And they said to her, there is no one among your relatives who has that name. Then they made signs to his father. Just imagine what that looked like. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Anyways. After this, his wife Elizabeth, okay, here we go. Okay. Then they made signs to his father to find out what he would like to name the child. He asked for a writing tablet, and to everyone's astonishment, he wrote, "His name is John." And when he did that, immediately his mouth was opened and his tongue set free, and he began to speak, praising God. And how cool would that be? Like the very first thing you do, like you're out and you're praising God. And then it goes on to Zechariah's song. So imagine, the people has been in darkness for 400 years. There's not been a prophet for 400 years to speak anything. God hadn't really spoke to anybody. He'd been silent for that long. The people, Israel, was in darkness. And then in verse 67, it says, his father, Zechariah, was filled with the Holy Spirit, and he prophesied. Imagine this, like there hadn't been any prophecies, there hadn't been anything that happened for 400 years, and then Zechariah hits them with this prophecy. Praise be to the Lord, the God of Israel, because he has come to his people and redeemed them. He has raised up a horn of salvation for us in the house of his servant David. As he said through his holy prophets of long ago, salvation from our enemies and from the hand of all who hate us, to rescue us from the hand of our enemies and to enable us to serve him without fear, in holiness and righteousness before him all our days. And you, my child, will be called a prophet of the Most High, for you will go on before the Lord to prepare the way for him. So he's talking to John here, okay? So imagine he says all that, then he looks down at his baby. He looks down at John as a little baby, and he says, and you, my child, will be called a prophet of the Most High, for you will go on before the Lord to prepare the way for him, to give his people the knowledge of salvation through the forgiveness of their sins, because of the tender mercy of our God, by which the rising sun will come to us from heaven, to shine on those living in darkness and in the shadow of death, to guide our feet into the path of peace. And that brings me to my last point. We try all these things, guys, when we're stressed out, when we're full of anxiety, when we're full of fear, when we're full of worry. But guys, I'm telling you, when you're struggling, there's no greater thing to do than to walk the path of peace. What is that path of peace tonight? It's Jesus. Jesus is the path of peace. And you say, well, if that's true, then sometimes it gets hard. It's hard to follow Jesus. It's not easy. Sometimes I don't hear from Jesus. It's hard. This Christmas season, I want you to know that the dysfunction of your family, guys, it probably isn't going to go away. It's probably still going to be dysfunctional this Christmas. I want you to know that your schedules being disrupted this Christmas just won't go away. The pressure to talk to your strange, weird family members probably isn't going to go away. The hurt that you may experience because you weren't invited to that party, it probably isn't going to go away. That hurt might still be there. But one piece of advice I'm going to give you guys tonight is that God doesn't promise you and I that he's going to take us out of the valley. He doesn't promise that everything's always going to be smooth sailing, that everything's going to be perfect. He doesn't promise that. But you see, what the Lord does promise is that, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. Why? Why do we not have to fear any evil? Because he is with us. And here's the thing, is, you know, a lot of times when we're following Jesus, I'll be real, like, how many of you guys know sometimes following, like a lot of time, most times following Jesus, you don't have a clue what's next. or what's in front of you. It looks kind of dark, doesn't it, in front of you? But here's the thing, as long as I'm following Jesus, I know that I'm walking on the path of peace. And I know that whenever I look around me and whenever I'm going, it doesn't matter what I'm going through. It doesn't matter if my family's messed up or things are messed up. It doesn't matter if I'm following Him. I can remain in perfect peace. Because here's the thing about Jesus is when I follow Jesus, He gives me a peace that passes all understanding. I can be around family members that I don't agree with or maybe that get on my nerves, and I can have a peace that passes all understanding. I can be in really stressful situations where I should just be losing it, and I can have a peace that passes all understanding. It's just true. I can't promise you that your family is going to get better, but I can promise you that as long as you are following Jesus, you can have peace. And if anything this Christmas season, some of you guys just need to walk out of here tonight with just a peace. And He can give you that peace. Why can He give you that peace? Because He is the Prince of Peace. Can't be like Kevin McAllister on Home Alone and say, I wish my family would disappear. And then we wake up Christmas morning and it's like, my family disappeared. No. They're there. They're going to hurt your feelings. You're going to be mad at them. Your pleasure is not ever going to bring you peace because you're always going to need more pleasure. Your passions are never going to bring you peace because you're always going to want to try to be more passionate about that or become better at that, and it's going to consume you. It'll never bring you peace. Your perfection will never bring you peace. Jesus is the only thing that can bring you peace. I want that peace. I want the peace of Jesus, and Jesus wants to give you peace tonight. And I know some of you guys, I feel like God gave this message to me because some of you guys are really struggling with anxiety in your own personal life, knowing your family situations and the holidays, and it's super stressful for you. And if anything this Christmas season, I just want you to know that God wants to give you peace. Why is Jesus the path to peace? Because He's with us. Why is Jesus the path to peace? Because here's the thing, when I'm following Jesus, I don't really know what's up ahead. But if I'm following Jesus, if I'm following the light, I don't have to know what's ahead. I don't have to worry about my future because as long as I'm following Him, I know that I am doing what I'm supposed to do. I love what it says here. It says, when Jesus spoke again to the people, He said, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me, they will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. As long as you're following Jesus, you'll never walk in darkness. Isn't that refreshing to know? But if we're ever following all this other stuff all the time, I promise you, it's going to lead you down a dark path. You'll be walking in darkness if that is where you're always pursuing and always going. Psalm 16:11 says, You make known to me the path of life. In your presence there is fullness of joy. At your right hand are pleasures forevermore. And the last reason that we know that Jesus is the path of peace is because He rescues us from our sins. And if anything, the path of peace probably wouldn't be how we would choose the path of peace or what it would look like. If we were God, we would probably choose a chiseled, full of testosterone, 24-year-old Jesus, warrior Jesus, to come into the world, right? But God sent the lowest of the low. because he wanted us to know that it doesn't matter how low that you feel about yourself. He was the lowest of the low for us. And he experienced and went through everything that you went through. And he walked through this life. He walked through as a homeless person, didn't know where he was going to lay his head down. And the path of peace had to come through the cross. For us to have perfect peace, it had to come through the cross. There was no other way. And Jesus laid his whole life down. He gave up his life. He hung naked and in shame on the cross just for you, so that you can have peace. But we got to make a choice tonight. Are we going to choose to follow him and walk that path of peace? Or are we going to keep pursuing all these other things, guys? John 14:27. Jesus says this, "Peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you. Not as the world gives, but I give to you. Let not your hearts be troubled, neither let them be afraid." Jesus, if we're saved, if we have Jesus in our heart, he's given us his peace. He says, cast all your worries on me, cast all your fear, all your anxiety on him, because he cares for you. So I'm going to close. I want us to stand tonight. We're going to pray, and then we're going to go to a small group. As we go to a small group tonight, I just want you to take that thing that causes you a lot of stress, and that maybe if you would be willing to share tonight in your small group, say, man, this thing causes me a lot of stress and a lot of anxiety, and I want to pray about that because I want to have peace. And my prayer, my hope, and my belief tonight is that each and every one of you tonight will walk out of here with peace. And I believe that Jesus wants to do that tonight. I don't believe you have to walk out of here with any anxiety, any fear, any worry. I think that God can help you with that tonight. And so, with every head bowed, every eye closed, I'm just going to pray for you real quick. If you would just be honest tonight and just say, man, when I need peace, I go to the pleasure, I go to people, I go to passions, and I go to perfection. If you would just be honest tonight and just say, man, when I am stressed out, I go to one of these things. Would you just raise your hand tonight and just be honest? I see all those hands. I see all those hands, all those hands. So, Lord, I ask tonight, God, because, Lord, we're just human, God, and we mess up. And, God, we do go to these things a lot, and we rely on these things a lot. But, God, I pray that, Father, you would help us to walk the path of peace that is you. I pray that, God, we would be like a John the Baptist this Christmas season, and that we would prepare the way for you, that we would prepare the way for us to have conversations about you, that we would prepare the way to lead our family or our friends to you this season. And that our focus, our attention, that if we can focus on the cross, if we can follow you, God, we can remain and keep that perfect peace, Lord. God, I pray that, Lord, you give these students your peace tonight, that peace that passes understanding, that peace that doesn't make sense, God. The peace that you're giving them right now, God, they shouldn't have it, but God, give them that peace over their families, over their situations, over their lives, Lord. And God, help us to rely on you and trust in you. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. So if you're